I packed the last of my gear for the week-long fishing trip with two of my closest friends. This trip wasn't just some casual getaway, it was tradition. Over the years, these trips had become a cornerstone of my life, a time to unwind, connect, and have some well-earned fun. But as I threw my bags into the car, I couldn't shake the nagging irritation. Something felt off about this trip, and it wasn't sitting well with me. For years, these trips were more than just the guys and me. Our wives joined us, making these getaways vibrant and memorable. Back in the day, before we settled down, we even crossed paths in the dating world. Messy, but all in good humor. This time, though, things were falling apart. Liam pulled out last minute because of some important business meeting, and naturally, Emma stayed behind to wait for him. Then Mark, ever the loyal worker, announced he had to leave early for a Friday meeting, so his wife followed suit. When Samantha caught wind that the other wives weren't coming, she decided she'd sit this one out too. I'll admit it pissed me off. These trips were as much about reigniting passion with my wife as they were about the camaraderie with my friends. Samantha and I had a rhythm. Before, during, and after the trips, we always found our groove. Missing that part stung more than I cared to admit. Still, I couldn't complain about the past week. Samantha had been unusually enthusiastic in the bedroom. Relentless, even. Not that I'm one to turn down my wife, but there were nights when I would have preferred to get some damn sleep. It was her usual routine before a trip, and I usually welcomed it. The rest of the year, our bedroom life left much to be desired. Twice a week if I was lucky, and even then, it felt half-hearted. That hadn't always been the case. When we first got married, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. If there was a flat surface or a quiet corner, we made it work. But about 5 years ago, things changed. Gradually at first, but by the end of that summer, the shift was undeniable. What was once daily became a few times a week, if that. I made efforts to bring the spark back, but Samantha had a knack for shutting me down. After a few frustrating arguments, I stopped trying. When she wasn't interested, I handled it myself and moved on. By Thursday night, I was in the office with a cold beer in hand, taking a break from packing. Samantha was upstairs putting the kids to bed, and for a moment, I savored the quiet. But that peace didn't last long. She came downstairs with a glass of wine and sat beside me, her expression serious, almost nervous. "Ethan," she started, her voice uncertain. "We need to talk." I put my beer down, already annoyed. "What is it?" I asked sharply. "Just let me finish before you say anything, all right?" "I need you to hear me out," she said, her tone growing firmer as if she were bracing herself. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "Go on, then." She hesitated, taking a long sip of her wine before continuing. "I've been thinking about this for a while, and I know it's going to upset you, but I need to be honest. I know you haven't been happy with our intimacy lately. I haven't been either. Ethan, I love you, but I'm just not attracted to you the way I used to be. And as much as I respect you, you're a great father, a provider, and my best friend. I need more than what we have in the bedroom." Her words were sharp, calculated. But they didn't cut me, they pissed me off. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but she wasn't joking. "I've met someone," she said, and just like that, the room went still. "He's someone I've known for a while, and he excites me in ways you can't anymore. I don't want to sneak around, so I'm telling you now. I'm going to keep seeing him." I stood up, my anger boiling over. "You're a cheater," I growled. "You think you can come in here, throw this garbage in my face, and I'm supposed to just take it?" Before I could say another word, Samantha stood up too. Her eyes narrowed, and she pointed a finger at me like she was scolding a child. "Sit down," she snapped. "You're going to hear me out, whether you like it or not." I stayed standing, glaring at her, but she didn't flinch. "You think this is easy for me?" she continued. "I've thought this through. I consulted Mark about divorce laws. Don't act like you have the upper hand here. If you try to divorce me, I'll take the house, the kids, and most of your income. You'll be left with nothing but regrets." I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest as Samantha continued her monologue, calm and calculated, as if she had rehearsed this moment 100 times. "And if you so much as think about finding another woman," she added, "I will file for divorce so fast it'll make your head spin. You'll lose everything, Ethan." Her smug grin made my blood boil. I didn't hold back this time. "Are you kidding me? You're sitting here threatening me, bullying me, and expecting me to just roll over and accept it? Meanwhile, you're the one cheating, but I don't even have the right to retaliate. My voice was sharp and controlled, each word biting. Samantha leaned back in her chair, her grin unwavering. Ethan, let's be real. What you're getting from me now is more than enough to meet your needs. If you go looking for something else, it's only out of spite. I'm being honest with you because I still value our life together. But let's face it, you're not fulfilling your marital duties. If you were capable of giving me what I need, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Her audacity made me laugh bitterly. You're unbelievable, I shot back. Not once did you come to me and tell me what you wanted. You never asked for anything different, never told me something was missing. I thought everything was fine because that's how you acted. How the hell was I supposed to know? Samantha shrugged, her expression almost pitying. If you have to ask this late in the game, Ethan, you're more clueless than I thought. And for the record, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. You've never known how to please me, and I finally decided you never would. That's when I started looking elsewhere. I clenched my fists, fighting to keep control. My mind was racing, but my anger was laser-focused. Before I could say anything, she dismissed me with a wave of her hand. Now go get dressed. I'm tired of your whining. For a moment, I considered firing back, but I knew it wouldn't lead anywhere. Instead, I marched upstairs, my mind churning with plans. I'd had enough of Samantha's arrogance, and I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. Breakfast was quiet, though the tension was thick. Sean, our son, asked what was wrong. Before I could answer, Samantha cut in with her fake maternal concern. Your father's just a little stressed about work, sweetheart. He'll be fine after his trip. She looked at me with a pointed glare, daring me to contradict her. I stayed silent, but met her gaze with a glare of my own. When I got to work, I'd already decided. I wasn't going on the damn trip. Samantha wasn't going to dictate my life, and I needed time to think. But before I could solidify my plan, Roger, one of my friends, called. Hey, Ethan, he said cheerfully. I heard from Samantha this morning. She mentioned you were thinking about backing out of the trip. What's up with that? The nerve of her, I thought. Yeah, something's come up, Roger. I can't go this time, I said firmly. Roger chuckled. Oh no, you're not pulling that. Samantha already told me you've been stressed and overworked, and she made me promise to make sure you came. I even checked with your secretary. You've got nothing important going on. So get your stuff and meet us at Denny's, or I'll come drag you there myself. I gritted my teeth, my mind whirring. Samantha's reach was everywhere. She'd already manipulated Roger, and now he was acting like her personal enforcer. I wanted to refuse outright, but a part of me hesitated. Could Roger be involved in this mess? Or was he just a pawn? My gut told me I needed to tread carefully. Reluctantly, I agreed. Fine, I'll meet you at Denny's. The dinner was a blur. My friends joked and drank like everything was normal, but I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal. Were these men really my friends anymore? Or had Samantha turned them into her allies? When Don asked what was bothering me, I debated spilling everything. Finally, I decided to trust them, at least for now. I told them about Samantha's betrayal and her arrogant threats. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Don leaned back, shaking his head. Damn, Ethan, are you sure that's what she said? I mean, Samantha's always been strong-willed, but this? I can't believe it. Well, believe it, I replied sharply. It's exactly what she said. Roger frowned, glancing at Don. Look, Ethan, I get that this is a lot to take in, but you need to think carefully about your next move. If she's serious, and it sounds like she is, you have to weigh your options. Divorce isn't just about breaking ties. The courts favor the mother in custody cases, and if you're not careful, you'll lose everything. Don nodded in agreement. He's right. The system isn't fair, Ethan. Unless you can prove she's unfit, she'll get the kids, the house, and a good chunk of your income. Alimony, child support, college expenses, it'll bleed you dry. You'll be working just to pay her. I sat there, my anger simmering beneath the surface. So what? I'm supposed to just let her walk all over me? Let her screw around while I play the dutiful husband? Roger sighed. I didn't say that. But if you're going to fight back, you need to be smart about it. Losing your temper won't help. I nodded, though the fire in my chest burned hotter than ever. If Samantha thought I'd just roll over and accept this, she was dead wrong. I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. Dawn leaned forward, speaking in that irritatingly calm, condescending tone. Ethan, I know this isn't easy for you to hear, but it's my responsibility to tell you. Don't do anything rash. If I hear about any of Samantha's friends being hurt, I'd have to report it. You'd be putting yourself in a worse position. My advice? Let it go. Maintain the status quo. Maybe if she gets this out of her system, she'll change her mind. I slammed my glass down on the table, anger flaring hot in my chest. Let it go. You want me to sit here and let her walk all over me? You'd let Shelley do this to you? Would you just sit back and accept it if she betrayed you like Samantha's doing to me? Dawn looked momentarily taken aback, but his smug confidence returned quickly. No, I wouldn't. But I know Shelley would never do something like that. She loves me, Ethan. She knows I'm the best thing that's ever happened to her. Emotionally, physically, financially. She wouldn't risk what we have. But your situation? You're in a corner, buddy. From what you've said, Samantha's got you under a microscope. If you even try to figure out who she's with, she'll know, and she'll retaliate. Face it, man, you're screwed. Roger, who had been quietly nursing his drink, suddenly chimed in. Honestly, Ethan, you've got to be careful here. She's obviously thought this through, and if you push too hard, you'll only make things worse. She already has the upper hand. Maybe it's time to accept the reality of your situation. I stared at them, disbelief and disgust warring within me. These were supposed to be my friends, guys I could trust. But the way they were talking, I wasn't sure whose side they were on. I noticed Roger's subtle smirk and Dawn's almost gleeful expression as they spoke. Something about their attitudes felt off. It wasn't just indifference, they were enjoying this. Finally, I had enough. I stood up, grabbing the bottle of whiskey off the table. To hell with her, and to hell with this conversation. Let's drink. The next morning, I woke up early, leaving my so-called friends behind. I grabbed my gear and headed upstream to my favorite fishing spot. The quiet helped clear my head, but it didn't silence the storm raging inside me. As I prepared to cast my line, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a rare signal in the middle of nowhere. I pulled it out and frowned at the screen. Samantha. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I listened to the voicemail, and her cold, calculated words sent a chill down my spine. Well, honey, she began, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. My sources tell me you got some great advice from Dawn last night. I hope you take it to heart. I love you, Ethan, but don't forget, I can let you go if I have to. The kids will be fine, and I'll still be well taken care of. Now enjoy your little trip. I stared at the phone, anger bubbling to the surface. How the hell did she know about my conversation with Dawn? There was no signal in the cabin and no landline. My mind raced. Was there a bug in my gear? Was someone intercepting my calls? I shoved the phone into my pocket, determined to get to the bottom of this later. I needed to stay sharp. As I turned back to the water, I didn't notice Roger and Dawn standing at the edge of the woods, watching me with knowing grins. Think that'll keep him in line? Roger asked, his voice low. Dawn chuckled, nodding. Yeah, but let's keep the pressure on for a while. Detailed reports for a few months should do it. He'll crack eventually. And when he does, Samantha can spend as much time as she wants with us. No more sneaking around, no time restrictions. Can you imagine the freedom? Roger smirked. She's hooked, man. The way she's been lately, she'll do anything to keep this going. And Ethan? He's too caught up in his pride to see what's right in front of him. If he tries to fight back, we'll make sure it all looks like we're just helping him figure things out. The two disappeared back into the woods, leaving me none the wiser. I fished until noon, but my mind wasn't in it. I kept turning over Samantha's words, trying to piece everything together. Who was she with? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, how could I stop it? By the time I returned to the cabin, I had more questions than answers. That night, after dinner, I sat with Dawn and Roger, nursing a drink. Dawn leaned forward, watching me carefully. You look like hell, Ethan, he said, a little too casually. What's eating at you? I hesitated, debating whether to confide in them again. But the nagging feeling in my gut told me to keep my cards close to my chest. Nothing. I lied. Just thinking about work. Roger smirked. raising his glass. Well, stop thinking and start drinking. You're supposed to be relaxing, remember? I forced a laugh, clinking my glass against his. But as I sipped my whiskey, my mind was elsewhere. Samantha thought she had the upper hand. She thought she could control me. And maybe she had my so-called friends wrapped around her finger. But she didn't know who she was dealing with. I wasn't going to play her game. Not anymore. I'd figure out the truth. And when I did, I'd make damn sure she regretted every second of it. Samantha's schemes and smug manipulations were reaching a boiling point. I wasn't going to be a pawn in her twisted little game. Her voicemail replayed in my head as I fished, mocking me with every word. My sources tell me, sources? Bugs? Spies? How deep did her web go? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. She wasn't just toying with me. She was orchestrating every move, manipulating everyone around her. And Don and Roger? They weren't just spineless. They were complicit. By the time I returned to the cabin, I'd resolved one thing. I wasn't letting this slide. I wasn't just going to sit back and let Samantha, her lover, or anyone else control my life. If she wanted a fight, she was going to get one. And if Don and Roger were playing both sides, I'd deal with them too. Tuesday night, they tried to get me drunk again, probably hoping I'd break down or spill something useful. I played along, sipping the whiskey slowly, letting them think I was compliant. But I didn't miss the sideways glances or the quiet exchange of words between them. Something was brewing, and I was the target. After a while, I faked drunkenness, letting my head drop to the table. I kept my breathing steady, listening intently as Don and Roger slipped outside to the porch. "I'm starting to worry about him," Roger muttered. "We've been talking to him for 4 days, and he's just getting angrier. If anything, he's closer to blowing up than giving in." "Relax," Don replied, his tone infuriatingly casual. "If he snaps, we'll handle it. Worst case scenario, he files for divorce, and Samantha makes him look like the bad guy. She's got everything lined up to come out of this squeaky clean. And honestly, if it comes to that, so what? I'll enjoy her just as much single as I do married." Roger laughed quietly. "You've got a point. But still, if he finds out about us, or worse, if he starts talking to our wives, we're screwed." "He won't," Don said firmly. "The guy's too stubborn to see what's right in front of him. And if he tries anything, we'll shut him down. Maybe even use a little force if we have to." I clenched my fist beneath the table. So, it wasn't just Samantha who was betraying me. It was these two idiots as well. They thought they were clever, thought they had me cornered, but they'd underestimated me. Big mistake. The next few days, I kept my distance, avoiding their probing questions and fake camaraderie. I didn't need their advice or their pity. All I needed was the truth and a plan. When it was finally time to leave the cabin, Roger rode with me, his usual smug grin plastered across his face. I stayed silent the entire drive, focusing on the road and keeping my thoughts to myself. The moment we hit an area with good cell service, I noticed Roger discreetly texting, probably updating Don and Samantha on my state of mind. Let them think I was defeated. Let them think they'd won. By the time we reached the house, I was burning with rage, but I forced myself to stay calm. Kenny's car was already parked out front, and when I stepped inside, there they were, Don and Samantha, sitting comfortably in my living room like they owned the place. Kenny was on the phone, pacing back and forth as he filled them in on the latest. "He's furious," Kenny said, his voice tinged with worry. "If anything, he's angrier now than when we left. I don't think this is going to work out the way we planned." Samantha crossed her legs, a sly smile on her lips. "Oh, it'll work. He just needs time to cool off. Once he realizes he can't win, he'll fall in line. They always do." Don laughed, raising his glass. "Here's to that. And to the nights we don't have to sneak around anymore." I stood in the doorway, watching them revel in their arrogance. They hadn't even noticed me. Perfect. I stepped into the room, my boots thudding against the floor. The sound silenced their laughter in an instant. "Ethan," Samantha said, her smile faltering for a split second before she regained her composure. "You're back early." I didn't reply. I just looked at each of them in turn, Kenny, Don, and Samantha, letting the weight of my silence settle over the room. Then I spoke, my voice low and cold. "I know everything." The color drained from Kenny's face. and Don shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Samantha, however, didn't flinch. She simply raised an eyebrow, her expression challenging. "Oh," she said, her tone dripping with feigned innocence. "And what exactly do you think you know, Ethan?" I took a step closer, towering over her. "I know about the bugs, the spies, the tracking. I know about your little plan to manipulate me. And I know about them." I jabbed a finger toward Don and Kenny, who looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. Samantha stood up slowly, her smile now a thin, dangerous line. "Well then," she said, "it looks like we're finally being honest with each other." "This isn't honesty," I snarled. "This is betrayal. But don't worry, Samantha. I'm not playing your game anymore. You wanted to control me, to back me into a corner. But you've made one critical mistake." "And what's that?" she asked, her voice still infuriatingly calm. "You underestimated me." Samantha's smirk faded slightly, her confidence faltering as the weight of my words hung in the air. Kenny and Dawn exchanged nervous glances, their smugness dissolving as quickly as it had arrived. "Underestimated you?" Samantha repeated, her tone clipped. "Ethan, let's not make this into something it's not. You're upset, I understand. But you don't have the power here. That's what you need to realize." I stepped closer, ignoring the unease radiating from the two so-called friends in the room. "Is that what you think?" I said, my voice as cold as steel. "That you hold all the cards? Let me tell you something, Samantha. Your little web of lies and manipulation is falling apart. I've been quiet, observing, letting you think you're in control. But now I've got all the information I need." Her mask of confidence cracked for the first time, and I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Ethan, don't do anything stupid. This can still work out for everyone." I laughed bitterly. "Work out? For who? For you? For these two backstabbers you've recruited to your little scheme?" I turned to Don and Kenny, who were both now sitting stiffly, their discomfort palpable. "I trusted you," I spat. "Both of you. But you sold me out for what? A few nights of fun? I don't know what's more pathetic, your betrayal or the fact that you thought I wouldn't figure it out." Kenny stammered, trying to find his voice. "Ethan, it's not what you think. Save it." I snapped, cutting him off. "You've already said enough. I heard everything. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Manipulating me, lying to my face, all while you conspired with her." I gestured toward Samantha, who now stood rigid, her arms crossed defensively. "Ethan," Don said, his voice low and placating, "you're emotional right now. Maybe we should all just sit down and talk this through." I slammed my fist against the wall, cutting him off. "Don't you dare try to patronize me. You've been playing me for a fool, but I'm done being your pawn. You think I'm just going to roll over and accept this? Think again." Samantha finally spoke, her tone sharp and commanding. "Enough, Ethan. You're not thinking rationally. You're angry, and I get that. But this is the reality of the situation, and you need to accept it. Fighting us will only make things harder for you." I took a step back, my lips curling into a bitter smile. "Oh, I've accepted the reality of the situation, Samantha. But not in the way you think. You've pushed me too far, and now it's my turn. You want to fight? You've got one." Don stood up, his face a mask of irritation. "Ethan, let's not turn this into something ugly. We've been friends for years." I cut him off with a glare. "Friends? Is that what you call this? Friends don't conspire to destroy someone's life. Friends don't stab you in the back while smiling to your face. You're no friend of mine, Don. And as far as I'm concerned, neither is Kenny." Kenny's face flushed, but he said nothing, his guilt written all over him. "I'm done talking," I said, my voice hard and final. "You've made your choices. Now, it's time for me to make mine. And believe me, you're not going to like what happens next." Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel and walked out of the room, my heart pounding with adrenaline and anger. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. They thought they had me cornered, but they were wrong. I wasn't defeated. I was just getting started. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. None of them saw the man outside, hidden in the shadows, pointing a camera and microphone directly through the window. The device recorded every word of their smug conversation. Monday morning, I didn't waste time. First on the agenda was finding a lawyer. Don's betrayal had left a void, but it also freed me to find someone who could fight fire with fire. After a string of calls and a few interviews, I settled on Sally Hawk. She came highly recommended and, during our meeting, exuded the kind of tenacity I needed. Sally didn't waste time either. Within hours, she filed motions to unfreeze my business accounts and secure enough funds for me to live on. She also suggested we hire a private investigative firm to keep tabs on Samantha and her accomplices. Wiretaps, video surveillance, the works. I gave her the green light. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was war. That evening, Tad delivered the footage he had captured over the weekend. Watching it was like pouring gasoline on the fire already burning inside me. Samantha wasn't just involved with one of my friends. She was involved with all three. Don, Kenny, and Roger. My so-called friends. At least now I knew exactly who I was up against. The next morning, I took that evidence and made 5 copies. One for each of their wives, one for my lawyer, and one for myself. The original went straight into a safe deposit box. But I didn't stop there. I uploaded the videos to several pay-per-view adult websites, using the real names of all the participants. The money was routed to an account in the Cayman Islands. The best part? I set it all up from Don's office. He had given me the key years ago, and when the site was inevitably traced, it would lead straight back to him. Emails with incriminating photos went out to Samantha's family and friends. By the time I was done, the damage was done. The chessboard was set. They had played their game. Now it was my turn. Wednesday was chaos. My phone rang nonstop with calls from people who had seen the video. Some were horrified. Others were gleeful at the scandal. That evening, Samantha called me in tears. "How could you do this?" she sobbed, her voice cracking. "I thought you loved me. I told you it was just physical because you couldn't give me what I needed. How could you ruin my life like this?" I laughed, the sound cold and devoid of sympathy. "Ruin your life? Rebecca, you ruined it yourself. I'm just making good on my promise. You thought I'd let you and your pathetic lovers get away with this? Think again. By the time I'm done with you, you'll regret ever crossing me." The next call was from my sister. "You finally found out about your perfect wife? Huh," she said mockingly. "Good for you. I didn't know she was screwing them all until I got this." She referred to the video, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "Now I think she and I can share the boys." Her maniacal laughter echoed in my ears as she hung up. Samantha's betrayal was bad enough, but hearing my sister revel in it twisted the knife even deeper. Then Don called. The moment I answered, his voice roared through the line. "You're a dead man, Ethan. What the hell did you do?" His rant lasted for 15 minutes, filled with threats of physical violence and legal retribution. "You've ruined everything," he bellowed. "I'll make sure you lose everything. Your money, your business, your kids. You'll be living in the gutter while I keep screwing your wife, just like I've been doing since high school. By the time I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never been born." I let him vent, recording every word through the automated answering system I'd installed years ago. His threats, his arrogance, it was all preserved, and he was too blinded by his rage to realize it. Calls from Samantha's parents followed. Her mother, distraught, begged me to stop. "Dave, I know she's hurt you terribly, but this is too much. Couldn't you have handled it more civilly?" By the time I returned to my office that evening, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place. The automated answering system I had installed was already paying dividends, recording everything and warning callers beforehand. Don, in his fury, had ignored the warning entirely, leaving a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Within days, Sally had filed complaints against Don with the State Bar. His license to practice law was suspended almost immediately, and the ethics violations piled up like a house of cards collapsing. By the time the divorce proceedings concluded, Don was disbarred for life, financially ruined, and his wife Shelley had drained the rest of his assets in their own messy divorce. As for Samantha, the courts didn't look kindly on her actions. The most damning piece of evidence came from a photo Tad's friend had captured. A shot of my 8-year-old daughter standing in the backyard, peering through the patio door as her mother engaged in her sordid escapades. That image sealed Samantha's fate. I was granted full custody of the children, and she was left with only 25% of the marital assets. The fallout was swift and brutal. Kenny and Pam divorced, with Pam taking the lion's share of their assets. Roger and Trixie somehow stayed together, though I suspected it was out of convenience rather than love. As for me, I wasn't done yet. My company was intact, my children were safe, and I had exposed every last one of them for what they were. They thought they could destroy me, but in the end, it was their own greed and arrogance that brought them down. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. A year later, I sat in my office, reflecting on how far things had come since the chaos ended. The headlines about Dawn and Kenny's violent fallout over Trixie were almost laughable. They had been living with Roger after losing their own homes, but their egos and insatiable appetites for control finally led to a physical fight. Roger, who once gleefully joined in their debauchery, had apparently grown tired of being left out of his own marriage. When the fists flew, it ended with Roger in the hospital and Dawn and Kenny serving a year in prison. The drama didn't stop there. Roger and Trixie divorced soon after. I couldn't muster an ounce of pity for any of them. They had sown the seeds of their misery, and now they were reaping the harvest. That day, Gertrude came into my office with a newspaper, the latest article about their disastrous lives in hand. She dropped it on my desk with a smirk and leaned back in her chair. "So," she asked, "have you ever talked to Samantha? I know she's allowed supervised visits with the kids." I shook my head. "Only when it's absolutely necessary, and even then, it's strictly about the children. If I could avoid even that, I would. The less I see or hear from her, the better." Gertrude tilted her head, her curiosity evident. "I've always wondered, after everything, did you ever figure out why she did it? I mean, why would someone who claims to love their husband destroy everything like that?" Her words brought a tightness to my chest, but I kept my composure. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, pulling out a folder. Sliding it across the table, I said, 7 months ago, her mother came to my office crying. She handed me this letter and begged me to read it. I don't know why I kept it, but I did." Gertrude opened the folder and began reading. The letter was written in Samantha's handwriting, every word laced with excuses, regret, and a warped sense of justification. "My dear Ethan, I know you probably think I have no right to call you my dearest anymore, but in my heart, you always will be. You are the only man I've ever truly loved, and I know I've lost you forever. But I need to open my soul to you. I never wanted to hurt you. I never planned to cheat on you either. But I did, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. You knew even back in high school that I had been with Dawn, Kenny, and Roger, just like you had been with their girlfriends. None of it seemed to matter back then, and I thought it never would. But the first time I cheated on you, it was different. It was our 9th anniversary, and you were tied up with that major theft investigation at work. I felt so lonely, and at Dawn and Shelley's Valentine's Day party, I drank too much. Dawn offered to drive me home, while Kenny followed to take him back. On the drive, Dawn started reminiscing about the times we'd been together in high school, and God help me, I let him get into my head. By the time we got to the house, I was aroused and vulnerable. They didn't force me, Ethan. I gave in. I didn't fight hard enough to stop them. Gertrude stopped reading for a moment, her face tense. "This is sickening," she muttered, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the letter. "Keep going," I said flatly. After that night, I told myself it was a mistake. But it happened again, and again. Every time you were away, they found a way to be there, tempting me. I became addicted, Ethan. Addicted to the thrill, the danger, the attention. Dawn convinced me that you'd never find out, and that it didn't have to hurt anyone. He was wrong. When we started talking about letting me cheat openly, I thought it was the only way to keep us together. I never wanted to leave you. You are an amazing father, a wonderful provider, and my best friend. But I was weak. I let my desires, my selfishness, ruin everything. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know the truth. I'll love you forever, Ethan, even if I destroyed what we had. Yours always, Samantha. Gertrude finished the letter and looked at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Dave, I don't even know what to say. It's horrible. But do you think she's telling the truth? I leaned back in my chair, my jaw tightening. I don't know, Gertie. Maybe. Maybe not. She always seemed too close to Dawn for my liking, even before all this. I used to brush it off, but after everything, I can't ignore the signs anymore. Gertrude hesitated. Do you think she really loved you? I thought about it for a long moment, then shook my head. I think she convinced herself she did. But love isn't just about feelings. It's about loyalty, sacrifice, and respect. She didn't love me, not the way I loved her. She loved what I provided, security, comfort, a family. But deep down, she was selfish. She cared more about her own needs than anything else. Gertrude reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. You deserved better. I know, I said simply. And I'll find better. This chapter of my life is over. As I closed the folder and locked it away, I felt a sense of finality. Samantha, Dawn, Kenny, Roger, they were all part of the past now. The future was mine to shape, and I wasn't going to let anyone hold me back again.